welcome back to my channel, and today I have a beginner's guide on how to seed start and get ready for your garden this spring and summer. Yes, it is spring right now, but it is still quite chilly here in my state of where I live, so I have to start a lot of seeds indoors before I plant them in the ground. So things like tomatoes and peppers and watermelon, things that take a long time to produce, need to start inside, so when I transport them outside, they are ready to go. So the first things first is you need to decide what you're going to plant, and you need to know your last frost date. You can simply do this by Googling it, looking up your location, your zone, where you live, and look up that last frost date. I usually like to decide, well, whenever I decide my last frost date, or I know my last frost date, I usually will plant the week after. So for example, my last frost date here is around Mother's Day, and I'll plant the week after, and I'll continue on until Memorial Day. That's usually the time where I kind of start hardening off and preparing my little seedlings, my little plants to go into the ground. Once that is done, you're just going to browse catalogs, browse garden stores, browse big box stores, and decide what you want to grow. I think that's the biggest thing, because like for me, if you're anything like me, I like to grow in abundance and realize that I don't need a lot of a particular type of fruit or vegetable, because I just can't eat it or produce enough, or I produce too much, my family won't eat, or I don't produce enough for us to eat. Okay, once you decide what you're going to grow, so I usually grow tomatoes, and I grow a couple different breeds, I guess you can call it, or varieties of tomatoes. Peppers are another thing, like jalapenos or any hot peppers, bell peppers, those things, because we do eat a lot of those. I save my cucumbers because I directly sow those in the ground, and you could start them in seedlings. That's perfectly fine. The problem is with me, I find that I have great success with just putting them right into the ground. They come in plenty of time for me to be able to pickle them and eat them in salads, so it's perfect. Tomatoes, however, I like different varieties, because I like to make salsas, and I like to make tomato sauces, and I also like to eat them for slicing. So with that being said, I don't want them all one particular time in the summer. I want them throughout the summer. So if I start early, I can get them a little bit earlier in the summer before the first frost comes in the fall. Now, once you've decided all of the variety of seeds that you're going to grow, is deciding where you're going to house them. I don't have access to a basement or a warm area in my home, so I purchased these very inexpensive greenhouses that is in one of the rooms in my home. They are great. The temperature, I've tested it, gets pretty warm in here when I keep it closed, because you do want warmth for your seedlings to grow. That's how they germinate: moist soil and warmth. Once the seedlings start popping and you start seeing green, they're going to need a light. So artificial light inside here that I usually put up with twine or zip ties does the trick. And then I water it. I have a ceiling fan above to give the what's the word I'm looking for? The interpretation, or it's imitating the wind. So I have that. You can also use a box fan or some type of fan in your area. Once that happens and I decide my seedlings get a little too big, sometimes that happens before they're ready to go out, depending on what week you start planting. You're going to need some larger pots to house them and to move them, and just a good soil, that drains well, like with peat moss and vermiculite and things like that. A good seed starting mix is fine. And then once your seedlings sprout, you're going to need a fertilizer. So I usually like to mix like my vermiculite, my peat moss, a seed starting mix with like a soil mixture with fertilizer. And these you can find at any garden stores or even online. So I've never bought heat mats. I know people that have, but if you find that your area is not warm enough, a nice heating pad works just fine. I usually do that when I want something to sprout very quickly, but I have great luck with what I'm doing here by keeping this warm. And they sprout just fine. Some of your seedlings will take some time to sprout. Sometimes they'll take anywhere from a couple days all the way up to 2 weeks. So just look on the back of the packaging is very helpful. Just read all of your packaging, read up on your area and your environment in which you can grow things, because some areas you will not be able to grow things well. One of the things I run into a problem is my cold hardy vegetables and fruit. If I don't start them early enough or at the right time where it's cooler here, it gets too hot and then everything bolts and then it's just not good. So that's one of those things that I'm still trying to work out, and then trying to work out any of my hot vegetables and fruit like tomatoes and peppers, getting them right at the same right consistency so I can get produce throughout the summer. So it's all just trial and error, and I think the biggest encouragement is just to get started, get your hands dirty and get in there. One of the biggest mistakes I made was buying fancy LED grow lights, which can be quite pricey, especially the last few years. And as you can see, they're quite bright in here. And these were the more expensive variety. And I purchased these at my local big box store. You can find them online. They're just shop lights. And they work just as well, and they're like a fraction of the cost. So I will link all of the stuff that I have purchased to start my seedlings over on my blog, which will be in the description box below. So make sure you check that out. So I guess just to recap is you want some type of container to house your seedlings, good soil, your seeds, obviously, some type of greenhouse or space that you can contain all of your trays of seedlings, and then grow lights, and then also fresh water is another important thing that you need to start your seeds indoors. Okay, so I just want to share with you, there are a lot of containers, and I will, like I said, I'm linking everything in the description box below. But there are beautiful containers that I reuse these every year. Just rinse them out at the end of the season and let them dry, and then store them away, and then they're ready to go. But you can use milk cartons, you can use paper cups, you can use all types of things that you may have around your house, so you don't have to spend thousands or hundreds of dollars on trays and things like that, especially if you're getting started. Because I think the biggest thing is, I think people get intimidated by, at least I do, is you could spend all this money and then it can flop, and you feel like you have nothing to show for it, and you feel like a failure because you gambled away a lot of money on something that flopped and it didn't work out. So if you can just find ways to save money, I use popsicle sticks to label just with the Sharpie. You don't need those fancy labels or anything like that. Just think outside the box on what you can do and start small. That's another thing I want to say, is start very small. Don't get overwhelmed. I think in the beginning for me, well, I know in the beginning for me, I started big. I just went big and got very overwhelmed, very intimidated, very discouraged. So just start small. Pick out a few things that you want to grow, that you know you're going to consume, and start there. If it's only going to be flowers, you don't want to grow any vegetables and fruits, start there. And then every year you can keep adding on. So I do want to share with you a few things that are super easy for beginner gardeners that I found to be easy and to have great success with. And that is beans. So any green bean, super easy. I'm directly sowing those. I am not going to grow those in the greenhouse because they take a very little time to germinate. So no need to grow them in the grow house. Leafy greens, any leafy greens that you like in your salad is perfect to get started with. You can start those in your greenhouse and you can start eating them right now. They germinate in very little time. They're super simple. Experiment with a bunch of different varieties. I love growing leafy greens. Tomatoes I find to be easy. They can be a little finicky with diseases and things like that, but they're very rewarding. They produce a lot, especially if you get a tomato seedling or plant that yields a lot of fruit. Cucumbers, I already talked about cucumbers. Very easy to grow. I directly sow those in the ground. They are easy, little germination, perfect. You do have to watch for some diseases and things like that. And if you want to know more about that, let me know in the comments and I'll talk about that when we get a little closer to that time of year. Squash, such as zucchinis, easy, directly sow those. Peppers, those are easy to grow. They can be a little finicky because with me is I do everything natural and organic, so it takes a long time to get a nice big juicy green pepper or jalapeno. I do start those in the greenhouse because they do take a long time to produce those vegetables. Broccoli is another thing that's very easy to grow. I have had mixed seasons with it, but I'm still determined to grow broccoli. The worst case scenario I said this year is they are great because they will sprout and you can use those for your microgreens. So, you know, that's the worst thing that could happen. Some herbs. I love to grow herbs because they are easy. Basil, chives, parsley, oregano, all easy to grow and great. And you can have fresh herbs in your salads or in your cooking. Some of the flowers that I find easy to grow are cosmos and zinnias. Those are easy. Pansies are easy. The seeds though are a little bit small in like the pansies, so you have to be mindful of that because you just want a smidget of dirt on the top until they germinate. So those are great to grow if you want to grow some flowers. And marigolds. Marigolds are great because they ward off any pests and easy. I directly sow all my marigolds because they grow so fast, they germinate so fast. And then, I wanted to mention another thing. If you want some instant gratification, radishes. Now, we're not a big radish family, but this year, so I kind of honed it down and I'm doing just a little bit this year. But they're great because they're great ground cover. They get the soil going and they're perfect. You can start those now pretty soon here where I live. And you're gonna have radishes in like 30 to 40 days, which is fantastic. Okay, so I wanted to show you the soil that I'm using, which is a combination of seed starting mix with vermiculite, peat moss, and some fertilizer. This soil I bought at my local garden center, so don't take the soil from outdoors and bring it in because there may be diseases and bacteria, and there's a process with that. But basically, you want a good quality organic soil, and you want to get the soil damp when you put your seeds in it, so the soil is nice and damp because that's how the seeds are going to sprout and make seedlings. Okay, so before I start putting my seedlings in my soil, you want to make sure your soil is a really good soil. I don't really use a seed starting mix per se, but I use a good mix of a bunch of things. It has a fertilizer in it, some vermiculite and other goodness in it to get my seedlings going. And then I make sure the soil is really moist. So that's what I'm showing you here before I put it in the pots, and it is somewhat moist. I'll just add water if I need to. Okay, so normally once my soil is halfway in the container, I fill it up about, I don't know, 75%, and then I use this to make little holes to put the seedlings in there. But as you can see, these tomatillo seeds are quite small, so we're just gonna gently move some dirt over it to cover them, and that's pretty much it for those. I even have some, I don't know how these got over here, but we're gonna move these over to the center and then bury them lightly, and then give it a good watering, and then put it in a warm, dark place until they sprout. Okay, so in this batch, I made little holes with this little dibbler here, and I can drop a few watermelon seeds, one or two, I like to, but just in case one doesn't germinate. So see, here's the seeds, and then I'm gonna cover the little hole up and label everything, and then put it in a warm, dark place. And then when the seedlings sprout, then I'm gonna have the grow lights right over them. Okay, so I wanted to show you inside of my grow house. I do have a few plants in here that I'm trying to get them really moving since I transplanted them, but some of these pots have not even started, and then you can see some of my jalapeno plants have sprouted. So as you can see, there's two in here, so there's two plants. I'm going to go ahead, they're very leggy, so I'm going to go ahead and probably repot these. It doesn't look like a lot of my seedlings sprouted in this tray for whatever reason. So I don't know if I'm just going to take out the ones that did sprout and then use the space, because there's like a lot of real estate there, because I do have all of these on the floor that need to find a home. And as you can see down there, my sweet peppers, don't mind the cords, but my sweet peppers, they've germinated, some germinated. I usually put about 2 to 3 seeds because of that reason. See how I put a seedling there and there's nothing. Then I got some tomato plants already popping, some more tomato plants back there, some cosmos already popping, which I'm gonna probably, because as you can see, there's these two seedlings popped, but then there was only one seedling that popped there. These sweet peppers down here seem to be more in abundance, and I have some little guys back there. So a part of me wants to wait a little bit because I'm afraid that some of them are gonna pop. So we'll have to see. And then these were just on special at the nursery, so I picked up some pansies because I wanted to use them to decorate a cake. And then as you can see back there, there's a heck of a lot of tomato plants that need to be, see how they've already sprouted, they need to be repotted into some bigger pots and whatnot. And then these are all, I just planted all these last night and they need spots. So like I said, see how there's some areas that are bare. They need to be condensed so I can put other things in there. This is a newer pot. And then there's the grow lights up there, as you can see. And so it's perfect. Okay, I wanted to show you this. This is reading at 71 degrees in here, which is great. Let's see if I can get a different reading without opening this too much. And yeah, so now it's open, so it's going down. So we're gonna close this up. But yes, that's, so sorry about that. So yes, that's how much it's reading in there. It's reading anywhere between, you want it to read anywhere between 65 and 70 degrees inside your greenhouses or the space that you're going to try to germinate those seeds. So be mindful of that. You want it in a warm place in your home. If you don't have a warm place, maybe you can create some type of greenhouse or purchase. These are pretty inexpensive, or the heating pads will work just fine. Watering tools I use this little watering can that I purchased inexpensively. So I use watering cans, I use a mister, and then I also use a tray to fill the bottom. So I'm just lightly sprinkling it on there just because I don't want my seeds to float away, especially my smaller seeds. My watermelon seeds are quite big, so I don't have to worry about those floating too far. You do want a tray to catch some of the water that leaks out. I apologize for all the animals in the area barking, but I think our local mail lady is coming through, and all of the dogs that live around me, including my own, like to let me know they're in the area. Okay, so not only do you water with the watering can, you fill trays. This is what I'm talking about with filling trays, is basically you're just going to fill the trays with water, and the water is going to go up to the roots of the plant and provide it with enough moisture that it may need. Okay, so once your seedlings have germinated, that's when you're gonna need the light. So if you don't have a bright sunny window, this window over here is a north window, and the window in the back of my house is a south window, but there's not a whole lot of space there. So unfortunately, I have to use artificial lighting for where I live. Plus, the hours of daylight are, you know, growing, but they're not quite there. So you want a good amount of time with it. A timer is nice to set your lights, and you can get that very inexpensive. And like I said, I'll link everything below in the description box. But yeah, it's super easy, guys. If I can encourage you right now to get started, there's so many great things about starting seeds indoors for you is you'll cut down on your produce costs, you'll have healthier choices, you'll know where your food came from. If you have children, it's a great way to learn about the food cycle, like from seed to plant to fruit and vegetable to the table. There's so many benefits, and hopefully this video is to encourage you and to inspire you to grow. Getting small children, even, I mean, I get my teenagers involved in helping with the season, either with picking the harvest, weed control, to planting the seedlings as much as possible. So hopefully this video encourages you to do that. If you have any questions, let me know in the question comment box and I'll be sure to answer it. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I am here to just encourage you to create a simpler lifestyle on a budget. It's been a process, but together we can do it, just to maintain that lifestyle we want. It is achievable just with a little bit of work. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any videos from me, and I'll talk to you guys later.